Question 1. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a new Siebel customer relationship management feature offers significant potential for increased sales efficiency and improved customer service, but also introduces new data handling processes. As a Siebel consultant advising a U.S.-based financial services firm, which approach best aligns with regulatory requirements and professional best practices for assessing this implementation. Option A. Implement the feature with minimal changes to existing security protocols, relying on the vendor's standard security features to manage any new risks. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that identifies potential threats to data security and compliance, evaluates the impact of these threats, and proposes mitigation strategies before proceeding with implementation. Option C. Prioritize the implementation of the feature immediately to capitalize on the projected sales gains, deferring detailed risk assessment until after deployment. Option D. Focus solely on the projected cost savings and revenue increases, assuming that existing security measures will adequately cover any new data handling risks. Correct answer is C. Prioritize the implementation of the feature immediately to capitalize on the projected sales gains, deferring detailed risk assessment until after deployment. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because the consultant must balance the perceived benefits of a new Siebel feature against the potential risks and costs associated with its implementation, all while adhering to the strict regulatory framework governing financial services in the United States. The consultant's recommendation carries significant weight, and a flawed assessment could lead to regulatory noncompliance, financial losses, and reputational damage for the client. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the proposed solution is not only technically sound, but also ethically responsible and legally compliant. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive risk assessment that aligns with the principles of sound financial management and regulatory compliance as mandated by U.S. financial regulations. This involves a thorough evaluation of potential threats, vulnerabilities, and their impact on business operations and data security. By identifying and quantifying these risks, the consultant can provide a well-reasoned recommendation that justifies the investment in the Siebel feature based on its ability to mitigate identified risks and achieve strategic objectives, thereby demonstrating due diligence and adherence to fiduciary responsibilities. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the immediate cost savings without a commensurate evaluation of the associated risks would be professionally unacceptable. This failure to conduct a thorough risk assessment directly contravenes the spirit and letter of regulations such as the Sarbanes-Oxley Act (SOX) and the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act (GLBA), which mandate robust internal controls and risk management practices for publicly traded companies and financial institutions, respectively. Such an approach could lead to the implementation of a solution that, while appearing cost-effective initially, exposes the organization to significant operational, security, or compliance risks, potentially resulting in substantial fines, legal liabilities, and reputational harm. Another incorrect approach that overlooks the potential for data breaches or unauthorized access when implementing a new feature would also be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. U.S. data privacy laws, such as the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, and sector-specific regulations like HIPAA for healthcare impose strict requirements for protecting sensitive customer information. A recommendation that does not adequately address these concerns, even if it offers perceived business benefits, would be irresponsible and could lead to severe penalties for non-compliance. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management framework. This includes 1. Clearly defining the scope of the assessment. 2. Identifying all potential risks: operational, financial, security, compliance, reputational. 3. Analyzing the likelihood and impact of each risk. 4. Evaluating existing controls and their effectiveness. 5. Determining the residual risk. And 6. Developing mitigation strategies. The consultant must then present a balanced view, articulating how the proposed Siebel feature addresses identified risks and contributes to the overall business strategy, supported by evidence and a clear understanding of the relevant U.S. regulatory landscape. Question 2. Market research demonstrates that clients implementing Siebel 8 solutions often face unforeseen challenges impacting project timelines and data integrity. As a Siebel 8 consultant, you are advising a new client on their upcoming Siebel implementation. Which of the following approaches to risk assessment would best align with professional best practices and ensure a robust, compliant deployment? Option A. Prioritize the speed of the Siebel implementation by deferring detailed risk assessment activities until after the initial go-live, addressing any emergent issues reactively. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment by engaging key stakeholders, analyzing historical project data, and employing a structured methodology to identify, analyze, and plan responses to potential risks across technical, operational, and business domains. Option C. Rely on the collective anecdotal experience of the project team members and a quick brainstorming session to identify potential issues, without formal documentation or structured analysis. Option D. Focus the risk assessment primarily on the technical complexities of the Siebel configuration and integration points, assuming that business and operational risks will naturally be managed by the client's internal teams. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment by engaging key stakeholders, analyzing historical project data, and employing a structured methodology to identify, analyze, and plan responses to potential risks across technical, operational, and business domains. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because a Siebel consultant is tasked with advising a client on risk assessment for a new Siebel implementation. The challenge lies in balancing the client's desire for rapid deployment with the imperative to identify and mitigate potential risks that could impact the project's success, data integrity, and regulatory compliance. The consultant must demonstrate a thorough understanding of risk assessment methodologies within the context of Siebel CRM and the relevant regulatory landscape. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it involves a systematic and documented process of identifying, analyzing, and responding to risks. This aligns with general IT project management best practices and, importantly, with the principles of due diligence and responsible system implementation. By proactively engaging stakeholders, leveraging historical data, and employing a structured methodology, the consultant ensures that potential issues are addressed before they materialize, safeguarding the client's investment and operational continuity. This proactive stance is crucial for maintaining client trust and delivering a robust, compliant solution. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on technical feasibility without considering business impact or regulatory requirements fails to provide a holistic risk assessment. This can lead to overlooking critical vulnerabilities that could result in data breaches, non-compliance penalties, or significant operational disruptions. Ethically, a consultant has a duty to advise on all material risks, not just those that are technically interesting. Another incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or the personal experience of a few individuals, without a structured framework, is insufficient. This method is prone to bias and may miss systemic risks. It lacks the rigor required for a professional risk assessment and could expose the client to unforeseen liabilities. Professionally, this approach demonstrates a lack of diligence and a failure to adhere to established risk management principles. A further incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of deployment over thorough risk identification is also professionally unsound. While time to market is important, it should not come at the expense of a secure, reliable, and compliant system. This approach neglects the potential for significant long-term costs associated with unaddressed risks, such as remediation efforts, reputational damage, and regulatory fines. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the project scope and objectives thoroughly. 2. Identifying all relevant stakeholders and their concerns. 3. Selecting an appropriate risk assessment methodology, e.g., qualitative, quantitative, or a hybrid. 4. Systematically identifying potential risks across technical, operational, business, and regulatory domains. 5. Analyzing the likelihood and impact of each identified risk. 6. Developing appropriate risk response strategies, e.g., mitigation, avoidance, transference, acceptance. 7. Documenting the entire process and communicating findings clearly to the client. 8. Establishing a process for ongoing risk monitoring and review. Question 3. The audit findings indicate that the Siebel 8 implementation, while technically functional, has resulted in inconsistent data entry and a significant number of support tickets related to user confusion regarding data fields and workflows. Which of the following approaches best addresses these findings and aligns with professional consulting best practices for Siebel 8 implementations? Option A. Focus on optimizing the performance of the Siebel 8 application to ensure faster response times, as this may alleviate user frustration and indirectly improve data accuracy. Option B. Advise the client to implement a strict data entry policy with severe penalties for noncompliance, thereby enforcing data accuracy through disciplinary measures. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive review of user training materials and workflow documentation, and implement targeted retraining sessions for end users. Simultaneously, analyze the data model and business process definitions to identify root causes of data inconsistency, and propose configuration adjustments or data cleansing initiatives. Option D. Immediately escalate the issue to the development team to investigate potential bugs in the Siebel 8 application code that might be causing data entry errors and user confusion. Correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive review of user training materials and workflow documentation, and implement targeted retraining sessions for end users. Simultaneously, analyze the data model and business process definitions to identify root causes of data inconsistency, and propose configuration adjustments or data cleansing initiatives. Explanation. The audit findings indicate a potential gap in how Siebel 8 consultant best practices are being applied, specifically concerning the management of customer data and its integration with other business processes. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a consultant to not only understand the technical capabilities of Siebel 8, but also to interpret audit observation through the lens of established industry best practices and regulatory expectations, even if specific regulations are not explicitly detailed in the exam syllabus. The challenge lies in balancing technical implementation with the broader implications of data integrity, security, and user adoption. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a holistic view of system implementation and ongoing management. It acknowledges that a successful Siebel deployment is not solely about technical configuration, but also about ensuring the system effectively supports business objectives, maintains data quality, and is usable by end users. This approach aligns with the implicit expectation of a consultant to deliver solutions that are robust, maintainable, and contribute to the overall success of the client's business operations. It emphasizes proactive identification and mitigation of risks, which is a cornerstone of professional consulting. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on technical configuration without considering user adoption or data governance would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a narrow, technically driven perspective that overlooks the human and process elements critical to system success, can lead to a system that is technically sound but functionally inadequate, resulting in low user adoption, data inaccuracies, and ultimately, a failure to achieve the intended business benefits. This also risks violating implicit ethical obligations to deliver value and avoid causing harm through poorly implemented solutions. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of deployment over thorough testing and validation would also be professionally unacceptable. This haste can lead to the introduction of defects, data corruption, and security vulnerabilities. Ethically, it represents a failure to exercise due diligence and professional skepticism, potentially exposing the client to significant risks and operational disruptions. It prioritizes short-term gains, faster deployment, over long-term system stability and client trust. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Understand the core business problem and objectives. 2. Evaluate the technical solution within the context of these objectives. 3. Consider the impact on end users and business processes. 4. Assess data integrity, security, and compliance requirements even if implicit. 5. Prioritize thorough testing and validation throughout the implementation lifecycle. 6. Maintain open communication with stakeholders regarding risks and progress. 7. Advocate for solutions that promote long-term sustainability and value. Question 4. The evaluation methodology shows a Siebel 8 consultant assessing the success of a deployed Siebel solution. Which approach best demonstrates a professional and effective evaluation of the solution's alignment with stated business objectives? Option A. Analyzing key performance indicators, KPI, directly tied to the business objectives the Siebel solution was intended to support, such as increased sales conversion rates or improved customer retention. Option B. Gathering informal feedback from a few end users about their general satisfaction with the system's usability. Option C. benchmarking the Siebel implementation against a generic industry standard without considering the client's specific business context or goals. Option D, focusing solely on technical metrics like system uptime, response times, and error logs to gauge performance. The correct answer is A, analyzing key performance indicators, KPI, directly tied to the business objectives the Siebel solution was intended to support, such as increased sales conversion rates or improved customer retention. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because the Siebel consultant is tasked with evaluating the effectiveness of a deployed Siebel solution against business objectives, which inherently involves subjective interpretation and potential bias. The consultant must navigate the complexities of aligning technical implementation with strategic business goals, ensuring that the evaluation is objective, data-driven, and adheres to the principles of best practice for consulting engagements. The regulatory framework for the 1Z0-202 Siebel 8 consultant exam, while not explicitly detailing specific financial regulations, implies a professional standard of diligence, accuracy, and client centricity in all consulting activities. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a structured, evidence-based methodology that directly links system performance to measurable business outcomes. This ensures that the evaluation is not merely a technical review, but a strategic assessment of the solution's value. By focusing on key performance indicators, KPI, that reflect business objectives, the consultant provides actionable insights that can drive further improvements and demonstrate ROI. This aligns with the ethical obligation to deliver value to the client and maintain professional integrity. An incorrect approach that relies solely on user anecdotal feedback without quantitative data fails to provide a robust and objective assessment. This can lead to misinterpretations of the system's true impact and potentially misguided recommendations. Ethically, this approach lacks the diligence required for a professional evaluation and could mislead the client. Another incorrect approach that focuses exclusively on technical system health metrics, such as uptime and error rates, without correlating them to business impact, misses the core purpose of the CRM system to support and enhance business operations. This is a failure of professional judgment, as it prioritizes technical minutiae over strategic business value, potentially leading to recommendations that do not address the client's actual needs. A third incorrect approach that involves comparing the Siebel implementation to a competitor's system without a clear understanding of the client's unique business context and objectives is also professionally unsound. This can lead to irrelevant recommendations and a misallocation of resources, failing to serve the client's best interests. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the client's business objectives and desired outcomes. This should be followed by the identification of relevant, measurable KPIs. The evaluation should then systematically collect and analyze data against these KPIs, incorporating both quantitative metrics and qualitative feedback where appropriate, but always grounding conclusions in objective evidence. Finally, recommendations should be directly tied to the findings and clearly articulate the expected business impact. Question 5. The risk matrix shows a high likelihood of unauthorized access to sensitive customer data within the Siebel system, coupled with a severe impact on regulatory compliance and business reputation if such an event occurs. The consultant has identified several potential mitigation strategies, ranging from implementing granular access controls to encrypting specific data fields. Which of the following represents the most professionally sound approach for the Siebel consultant to recommend and implement? Option A. Proceed with implementing the proposed security enhancements based on the consultant's personal judgment of the most effective measures, without formal client sign-off or detailed documentation of the decision-making process. Option B. Recommend and implement a phased approach that involves a detailed risk assessment of each data element, followed by the implementation of proportionate security controls, comprehensive user training, and rigorous testing, all documented and aligned with relevant data protection regulations. Option C. Immediately implement the most restrictive access controls and data encryption methods available across all sensitive data fields to eliminate any potential for unauthorized access, regardless of user impact or system performance. Option D. Advise the client to accept the identified risk as a calculated business risk, focusing only on reactive measures in the event of a breach, as proactive security implementation is too costly and time-consuming. The correct answer is B. Recommend and implement a phased approach that involves a detailed risk assessment of each data element, followed by the implementation of proportionate security controls, comprehensive user training, and rigorous testing, all documented and aligned with relevant data protection regulations. Explanation: this scenario presents a common challenge for Siebel consultants, balancing the need for robust data integrity and security with the practical demands of user adoption and system performance. The risk matrix, a standard tool for assessing potential issues, highlights a critical tension. The challenge lies in interpreting the matrix's findings and translating them into actionable, compliant, and effective solutions. A consultant must not only understand the technical implications of data security, but also the regulatory landscape governing data handling and the business impact of proposed changes. The correct approach prioritizes a comprehensive, risk-based strategy that aligns with regulatory requirements and business objectives. It involves a thorough assessment of the identified risks, considering their likelihood and impact, and then developing mitigation strategies that are both technically sound and compliant. This approach demonstrates professional due diligence by ensuring that security measures are proportionate to the risks and that all actions are justifiable under relevant regulations. It also fosters trust with the client by presenting a well-reasoned plan that addresses their concerns while upholding professional standards. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on implementing the most stringent security measures without considering the business impact or regulatory nuances would be professionally unsound. This could lead to an overly complex or restrictive system that hinders user productivity and potentially violates the principle of proportionality in data protection, where measures should be adequate but not excessive. Another incorrect approach that bypasses established change control processes or fails to document the rationale behind decisions would be a direct violation of professional conduct and could expose the organization to significant compliance risks. Such actions undermine the integrity of the implementation and could lead to audit failures or legal repercussions. Furthermore, an approach that ignores the potential for data corruption or loss during security enhancements without adequate backup and recovery plans demonstrates a failure to uphold the duty of care expected of a consultant. Professionals should approach such situations by first thoroughly understanding the client's business context and regulatory obligations. They should then systematically analyze the risk matrix, quantifying risks where possible and qualitatively assessing their impact, developing a range of potential solutions, evaluating each against technical feasibility, cost, business impact, and regulatory compliance is crucial. The decision-making process should involve clear documentation of the rationale, consultation with relevant stakeholders, including legal and compliance teams, and adherence to established change management procedures. This structured, evidence-based approach ensures that decisions are defensible, ethical, and aligned with best practices. Question 6. Quality control measures reveal that a critical business process in a Siebel 8 implementation is not performing optimally due to a perceived gap in standard functionality. The business stakeholders are requesting a direct customization to address this perceived gap immediately to improve user efficiency. As a Siebel consultant, what is the most professionally responsible approach to manage this request? Option A. Immediately implement the requested direct customization, as per the business stakeholders' request to ensure rapid delivery and user satisfaction. Option B. Inform the business stakeholders that the request cannot be fulfilled due to the complexity and suggest they adapt their process to the existing Siebel functionality. Option C. Conduct a thorough impact analysis of the proposed customization. Evaluate alternative solutions within the Siebel framework, e.g., configuration, workflow automation, existing features, and propose a solution that aligns with Siebel best practices and minimizes technical debt. Option D. Develop a workaround that technically achieves the desired outcome but deviates significantly from standard Siebel data structures and configuration patterns to expedite the solution. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough impact analysis of the proposed customization. Evaluate alternative solutions within the Siebel framework, e.g., configuration, workflow automation, existing features, and propose a solution that aligns with Siebel best practices and minimizes technical debt. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in Siebel implementations, where a consultant must balance the immediate need for a functional solution with the long-term implications of technical debt and adherence to best practices. The pressure to deliver quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise data integrity, system maintainability, and future scalability. The consultant's judgment is critical in identifying and mitigating these risks, ensuring the solution is not only functional, but also robust and sustainable. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a thorough impact analysis and adherence to established Siebel development and configuration best practices. This involves understanding the business requirements, assessing the potential impact of proposed changes on existing functionality and data, and designing a solution that aligns with Siebel's architecture and data model. This methodology ensures that the solution is well integrated, maintainable, and less prone to future issues. It also aligns with the implicit regulatory expectation of delivering reliable and auditable systems, even if specific regulations for the 1Z0-202 exam jurisdiction are not explicitly stated as financial or data privacy focused. The focus is on building quality into the system from the outset. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately implementing the requested customization without a comprehensive review. This bypasses essential steps like impact analysis and adherence to Siebel's architectural principles. The regulatory/ethical failure here is the potential to introduce instability, data corruption, or security vulnerabilities, which can have downstream consequences for the business and its stakeholders. Demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for system integrity. Another incorrect approach is to defer the customization indefinitely due to perceived complexity, without offering alternative solutions or a phased implementation plan. This fails to meet the business need and can lead to frustration and a perception of unresponsiveness. Ethically, it represents a failure to adequately serve the client's requirements and explore all viable options. A third incorrect approach is to implement a workaround that is technically feasible, but violates Siebel's data model or standard configuration patterns. This creates significant technical debt, making future upgrades, maintenance, and integration extremely difficult and costly. The regulatory/ethical failure lies in creating a system that is inherently fragile and difficult to manage, potentially leading to compliance issues if the system's integrity is compromised. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured approach to problem solving. This involves clearly understanding the business problem, evaluating the technical implications of various solutions, considering the long-term impact on the system and the business, and communicating potential risks and benefits transparently to stakeholders. When faced with pressure to deliver quickly, it is crucial to advocate for best practices and a phased approach that balances speed with quality and sustainability. The decision-making process should always prioritize the integrity and long-term viability of the system, even if it requires more upfront effort. Question 7. Process analysis reveals that a Siebel 8 implementation requires a robust strategy for generating test data that accurately reflects production environments while strictly adhering to data privacy regulations. The consultant is evaluating methods to anonymize sensitive customer information within the Siebel database for use in UAT. Which approach best balances the need for realistic test data with regulatory compliance? Option A. Remove all fields identified as sensitive from the test database to eliminate any privacy risk. Option B. Implement a reversible anonymization technique that preserves data relationships and statistical properties, allowing for controlled re-identification if absolutely necessary for debugging under strict protocols. Option C. Replace all sensitive data fields with generic, non-unique placeholder values such as test user or n/a. Option D. Apply a simple character-by-character substitution cipher to all sensitive data fields to obscure their original values. The correct answer is B. Implement a reversible anonymization technique that preserves data relationships and statistical properties, allowing for controlled re-identification if absolutely necessary for debugging under strict protocols. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge for Siebel consultants, balancing the need for efficient data management with the imperative to adhere to data privacy regulations. The consultant must navigate the complexities of data anonymization techniques while ensuring that the resulting data is still fit for purpose for testing. The professional challenge lies in selecting an anonymization method that effectively mitigates privacy risks without rendering the test data unusable, which could lead to inaccurate testing and ultimately a flawed implementation. This requires a deep understanding of both Siebel's data structures and the specific regulatory requirements governing data handling. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves employing a robust, reversible anonymization technique that preserves the referential integrity and statistical properties of the original data. This aligns with best professional practice by ensuring that test data accurately reflects production scenarios, thereby enabling thorough and reliable testing. From a regulatory standpoint, using a method that allows for re-identification under controlled circumstances, e.g., for debugging purposes with strict access controls, demonstrates a commitment to compliance with data protection principles, such as data minimization and purpose limitation, while still allowing for necessary operational functions. This approach prioritizes both data utility for testing and regulatory adherence. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to simply delete sensitive fields from the test database. This is a regulatory failure because it likely violates the principle of data minimization and purpose limitation. While it removes sensitive data, it also fundamentally alters the data structure and relationships, rendering the test data unrepresentative of production. This can lead to missed defects and a compromised testing outcome, which is professionally negligent. Another incorrect approach is to replace sensitive data with generic placeholder values, e.g. John Doe, 123 Main Street. This is a regulatory failure as it often fails to adequately anonymize the data. Such placeholders can be easily guessed or, in combination with other non-sensitive data, can lead to re-identification. Furthermore, it significantly degrades the utility of the test data, as it does not reflect the diversity and complexity of real-world data, leading to ineffective testing and potential compliance gaps if the system is not tested against realistic scenarios. A third incorrect approach is to use a simple substitution cipher for all sensitive fields. While this might seem like anonymization, it is often insufficient. If the substitution key is compromised, or if patterns exist in the original data, re-identification becomes possible. This approach fails to meet the standard of robust anonymization required by many data protection regulations, leaving the organization vulnerable to data breaches and regulatory penalties. It also compromises the integrity of test data by introducing artificial patterns or limitations. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach. First, identify all sensitive data elements within the Siebel system. Second, understand the specific data protection regulations applicable to the jurisdiction. Third, evaluate various anonymization techniques, considering their impact on data utility, reversibility, if required for specific testing scenarios, and the strength of anonymization against potential re-identification attacks. The chosen method should be documented, and its effectiveness regularly reviewed. This systematic process ensures that both business objectives, effective testing, and regulatory obligations are met. Question 8. The efficiency study reveals that the client's existing customer data is highly inconsistent and contains numerous duplicate records. The project timeline is aggressive, and the client is eager for a rapid deployment of the Siebel 8 system. Which approach best balances the need for a timely go-live with the imperative of data integrity and system usability? Option A. Implement a phased data migration strategy, incorporating data validation and cleansing activities at each stage before loading data into Siebel, and conduct thorough user acceptance testing on the migrated data. Option B. Focus solely on the technical migration of data, assuming that users will identify and correct data errors through their daily use of the Siebel system. Option C. Migrate all existing data directly into Siebel as quickly as possible, and plan for a separate post-migration data cleansing project to address inconsistencies later. Option D. Prioritize migrating only the most critical customer data fields, deferring the migration of less critical fields and their associated validation until after the initial go-live. The correct answer is A. Implement a phased data migration strategy, incorporating data validation and cleansing activities at each stage before loading data into Siebel, and conduct thorough user acceptance testing on the migrated data. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge for Siebel consultants, balancing the need for rapid deployment with the imperative of maintaining data integrity and adhering to established best practices. The pressure to deliver a functional system quickly can lead to shortcuts that, while seemingly efficient in the short term, can introduce significant risks to data quality, system performance, and future maintainability. The consultant must navigate these competing demands while upholding professional standards and ensuring the client's long-term success. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a phased implementation with robust data validation and cleansing processes integrated at each stage. This aligns with Siebel's architectural principles and industry best practices for CRM deployments. By validating data against defined business rules and cleansing inconsistencies before migration, the consultant ensures that the data loaded into Siebel is accurate, complete, and usable. This proactive approach minimizes the risk of data-related issues post-go-live, which can be costly and time-consuming to rectify. It also supports the principle of garbage in, garbage out, ensuring that the system's value is derived from reliable information. This aligns with the implicit ethical obligation to deliver a high-quality, functional solution that meets the client's business needs without compromising data integrity. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves migrating data directly without prior validation or cleansing. This is professionally unacceptable, as it directly violates the principle of data integrity. The regulatory framework for data management, while not explicitly detailed in the 1Z0-202 syllabus, implicitly requires that data handled within a business system be accurate and reliable. Migrating dirty data can lead to incorrect reporting, flawed decision-making, and a loss of user trust in the Siebel system, potentially exposing the client to business risks. Another incorrect approach is to defer all data validation and cleansing to post-migration. Some post-migration adjustments may be necessary. Making this the primary strategy is a failure of professional due diligence. It shifts the burden of error correction to a later, more critical phase of the project, increasing the likelihood of delays and cost overruns. This approach demonstrates a lack of foresight and a failure to proactively address potential data quality issues, which is a hallmark of unprofessional practice. A third incorrect approach is to prioritize speed of migration over the completeness of data fields. This can lead to incomplete customer records, missing critical information for sales, marketing, or service processes. Such an approach undermines the core purpose of a CRM system, which is to provide a comprehensive view of the customer. It is professionally irresponsible to deliver a system that cannot adequately support the client's business operations due to missing data, even if the migration itself was technically swift. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach, identifying critical data elements and potential data quality issues early in the project lifecycle. A structured data migration strategy that includes clear validation rules, cleansing procedures, and iterative testing is essential. Consultants should advocate for sufficient time and resources dedicated to data preparation, educating the client on the importance of data quality for the success of the Siebel implementation. When faced with pressure to cut corners, professionals must clearly articulate the risks associated with such decisions and propose alternative solutions that balance speed with quality. Question 9. The evaluation methodology shows that a Siebel consultant is assessing different approaches for a critical data migration project. Which of the following methodologies best aligns with professional best practices for ensuring data integrity, client satisfaction, and project success within a standard business consulting framework? Option A. A methodology that selects the migration approach with the lowest upfront cost, regardless of potential long-term implications for data quality or system performance. Option B. A methodology that defines clear, measurable success criteria in collaboration with the client, incorporates iterative testing and validation with business stakeholders, and prioritizes a phased migration based on risk assessment. Option C. A methodology that relies solely on the default migration scripts and recommendations provided by the Siebel vendor, assuming these are universally applicable to all client environments. Option D. A methodology that focuses exclusively on the speed of data transfer, aiming to complete the migration in the shortest possible timeframe without extensive validation. The correct answer is B. A methodology that defines clear, measurable success criteria in collaboration with the client, incorporates iterative testing and validation with business stakeholders, and prioritizes a phased migration based on risk assessment. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the Siebel consultant is tasked with evaluating a best practice approach for data migration without a clear, universally defined standard for best practice within the context of the 1Z0-202 exam's implied regulatory framework, which, for this exam, is assumed to be a generic business process-oriented framework without specific jurisdictional legal mandates beyond general data privacy and integrity principles. The consultant must balance efficiency, data integrity, and adherence to the client's specific, potentially unstated, requirements. The core difficulty lies in selecting an evaluation methodology that is both robust and adaptable to the unique project context. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it emphasizes a structured, iterative, and client-centric evaluation. This involves defining clear success criteria upfront, aligning with the client's business objectives and risk tolerance, and incorporating stakeholder feedback throughout the process. This aligns with general professional ethics of transparency, accountability, and delivering value. By focusing on measurable outcomes and client validation, the consultant ensures the chosen migration strategy is not only technically sound, but also operationally effective and accepted by the business. An incorrect approach that relies solely on vendor documentation fails to account for the client's specific environment, customizations, or unique data challenges. This is professionally unacceptable as it prioritizes a generic solution over a tailored one, potentially leading to data corruption, project delays, and client dissatisfaction. It also bypasses critical client validation steps. Another incorrect approach that focuses exclusively on the lowest cost migration option ignores the potential risks associated with cost-cutting, such as compromised data quality, inadequate testing, or insufficient post-migration support. This is ethically questionable as it may not represent the client's best long-term interest and could lead to hidden costs and liabilities. It fails to uphold the professional duty of care. A third incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of execution above all else, without adequate planning or validation, is also professionally unsound. This can lead to rushed decisions, overlooked critical steps, and a higher probability of errors, ultimately jeopardizing data integrity and business continuity. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the potential negative consequences for the client. The professional reasoning process should involve understanding the client's business context, identifying potential risks and benefits of different migration strategies, defining clear, measurable objectives, and engaging stakeholders in the evaluation and decision-making process. This iterative approach, grounded in a thorough understanding of the project's unique requirements and constraints, is crucial for successful outcomes. Question 10. The monitoring system demonstrates a significant discrepancy in customer contact information between the legacy system and the newly defined data model for Siebel 8. The business requires immediate reconciliation to ensure accurate customer outreach for an upcoming marketing campaign. What is the most professional and responsible approach to address this data discrepancy? Option A. Halt all further development and deployment activities related to the new data model until a comprehensive, long-term data governance strategy can be fully defined and implemented across the organization. Option B. Implement a phased rollout of the data reconciliation process, starting with a subset of customers in a staging environment to validate the migration script and business logic, followed by a full production deployment with a documented rollback plan. Option C. Immediately execute the data reconciliation script directly in the production Siebel environment to ensure the marketing campaign has the most up-to-date information available, accepting the risk of potential data anomalies. Option D. Prioritize the technical execution of the data migration script, focusing on its efficiency and accuracy in transforming the data, and deferring any user validation or business impact assessment until after the script has been run in production. The correct answer is B. Implement a phased rollout of the data reconciliation process, starting with a subset of customers in a staging environment to validate the migration script and business logic, followed by a full production deployment with a documented rollback plan. Explanation. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in Siebel environments, ensuring data integrity and compliance with evolving business requirements without disrupting ongoing operations. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need for accurate, up-to-date customer information with the operational demands of a live system. A consultant must navigate potential data conflicts, user impact, and the risk of introducing errors during a critical update. The correct approach, which involves a phased rollout with thorough testing in a staging environment and a rollback plan, represents best professional practice because it prioritizes data integrity and minimizes business disruption. This aligns with general principles of responsible system implementation and data management, which are implicitly expected in professional consulting engagements. While the 1Z0-202 exam syllabus doesn't specify a particular jurisdiction's regulations for this scenario, the ethical and professional standards of IT consulting universally mandate minimizing risk and ensuring system stability. A phased approach allows for early detection of issues, validation of data transformations, and user acceptance testing, thereby safeguarding the integrity of the customer data and the operational continuity of the Siebel system. An incorrect approach that immediately deploys the changes to production without adequate testing or a rollback strategy fails to uphold professional standards. This could lead to data corruption, incorrect customer records, and significant operational downtime, directly impacting the business and potentially leading to financial losses or reputational damage. Such an action would be considered negligent and a breach of professional duty to implement solutions responsibly. Another incorrect approach, which involves delaying the update indefinitely due to fear of issues, is also professionally unsound. While caution is necessary, an indefinite delay prevents the business from realizing the benefits of the updated data model and may lead to the system falling further out of sync with business needs. This demonstrates a lack of proactive problem solving and an inability to manage implementation risks effectively. A third incorrect approach, focusing solely on the technical aspects of the data migration script without considering the business impact or user validation, is also flawed. This narrow focus ignores the critical human element and the real-world consequences of data changes. Professional decision-making in such situations requires a holistic view, encompassing technical feasibility, business impact, user adoption, and risk mitigation. Professionals should employ a structured approach. First, understand the business requirement and its impact. Second, design a technically sound solution. Third, rigorously test the solution in a controlled environment. Fourth, plan for deployment with contingency measures. And finally, monitor the system post-implementation. Question 11. System analysis indicates that a client's existing, non-standard business process for managing customer service requests, which involves a unique multi-stage approval workflow not directly supported by Siebel's out-of-the-box service module, is causing delays and data inconsistencies. The client insists on replicating this exact workflow within Siebel to avoid any perceived disruption to their current operation. What is the most professionally sound approach for a Siebel 8 consultant in this situation? Option A. Analyze the client's current workflow to understand the underlying business requirements and explore re-engineering the process to align with Siebel's standard service module capabilities, recommending customization only if essential business requirements cannot be met through configuration. Option B. Implement Siebel's standard service module functionality and instruct the client to adapt their business process to fit the system's capabilities, assuming they will eventually see the benefits. Option C. Advise the client that their current process is inefficient and refuse to implement it, forcing them to adopt Siebel's standard service module functionality without further discussion. Option D. Immediately develop custom Siebel workflows and business services to precisely replicate the client's existing multi-stage approval process, prioritizing client satisfaction with their current operational model. The correct answer is A. Analyze the client's current workflow to understand the underlying business requirements and explore re-engineering the process to align with Siebel's standard service module capabilities, recommending customization only if essential business requirements cannot be met through configuration. Explanation. The scenario presents a common implementation challenge where a client's business process, while functional, deviates from Siebel's out-of-the-box capabilities, leading to a potential need for customization. The professional challenge lies in balancing the client's immediate needs and perceived requirements with the long-term maintainability, scalability, and adherence to Siebel best practices. A consultant must navigate this by understanding the underlying business drivers and evaluating the trade-offs between customization and configuration. The correct approach involves a thorough analysis of the business process to identify if the deviation is a critical business differentiator or a legacy workaround. If it's the latter, Re-engineering the process to align with Siebel's standard functionality is the most professional and sustainable solution. This approach minimizes future technical debt, reduces the complexity of upgrades and maintenance, and leverages the inherent strengths of the Siebel platform. Adhering to Siebel's recommended implementation methodologies and best practices, which often favor configuration over extensive customization, is a cornerstone of professional consulting. This aligns with the implicit ethical obligation to provide solutions that are robust, efficient, and cost-effective in the long run, avoiding unnecessary complexity that could lead to future client dissatisfaction or increased support costs. An incorrect approach would be to immediately proceed with extensive custom code to replicate the client's existing, non-standard process. This fails to address the root cause of the deviation and introduces significant risks. Ethically, this could be seen as a failure to provide the most prudent and cost-effective solution, potentially leading to higher long-term costs for the client due to increased maintenance overhead, complex testing, and potential conflicts during future upgrades. It also demonstrates a lack of strategic thinking, prioritizing immediate client demands over sustainable system architecture. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the client's process entirely without understanding its business rationale. This shows a lack of client empathy and a failure to engage in proper business analysis, potentially alienating the client and missing opportunities to identify genuine business needs that might require thoughtful, albeit potentially limited, customization. The professional decision-making process should involve a structured approach. First, deeply understand the client's business objectives and the rationale behind their current process. Second, analyze the Siebel platform's standard capabilities to determine if they can adequately address the business need, even if it requires a slight process adjustment. Third, evaluate the impact of customization versus configuration in terms of cost, complexity, maintainability, and upgradability. Finally, present a clear recommendation to the client, supported by a thorough analysis of the pros and cons of each option, empowering them to make an informed decision. Question 12. Assessment of the most appropriate strategy for integrating customer data from a legacy system into a Siebel 8 implementation when the legacy system's data is known to have inconsistencies and missing fields, and the business requires the data to be available within the Siebel system within a tight deadline. Option A. Recommend a phased integration approach that includes data cleansing and validation rules within Siebel before full data migration, even if it extends the initial go-live timeline. Option B. Directly map the legacy system's data fields to Siebel fields without any intermediate validation or transformation to meet the immediate deadline. Option C. Implement the direct mapping as requested and plan to address data quality issues reactively after the initial go-live. Option D. Advise the client to postpone the integration until the legacy system's data is fully cleansed and standardized externally. The correct answer is A. Recommend a phased integration approach that includes data cleansing and validation rules within Siebel before full data migration, even if it extends the initial go-live timeline. Explanation. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge where a Siebel consultant must balance the immediate business need for a feature with the long-term implications of data integrity and regulatory compliance. The challenge lies in the consultant's responsibility to advise the client on the most robust and compliant solution, even if it requires more upfront effort or a phased approach. The client's desire for a quick fix, driven by perceived urgency, can lead to shortcuts that compromise data quality and auditability, which are critical in regulated environments. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes data integrity and adherence to established Siebel best practices for data modeling and integration. By recommending a phased implementation that includes proper data cleansing, validation rules, and potentially a dedicated integration layer, the consultant ensures that the new data is accurate, consistent, and traceable. This aligns with the general principles of good data governance and the implicit requirements of maintaining auditable records, which are fundamental in any business context and particularly relevant if the Siebel implementation supports regulated processes. The consultant is acting as a trusted advisor, guiding the client towards a sustainable and compliant solution rather than enabling a potentially problematic quick fix. An incorrect approach that involves directly mapping the external system's data fields to Siebel without any intermediate validation or transformation poses a significant regulatory and ethical risk. This bypasses essential data quality checks, leading to the introduction of potentially inaccurate, incomplete, or inconsistent data into the Siebel system. In a regulated environment, such data could lead to incorrect reporting, flawed decision-making, and an inability to pass audits, potentially resulting in fines or legal repercussions. Ethically, it represents a failure to uphold professional standards by not advising the client on the risks associated with poor data quality. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the data quality issues and proceed with the direct mapping, is professionally unacceptable because it demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the long-term consequences of poor data. This can lead to a corrupted Siebel repository, making future development and maintenance more difficult and costly. It also undermines the credibility of the consultant and the Siebel implementation itself. A third incorrect approach, which is to implement the direct mapping and then address data quality issues reactively, is also flawed. While reactive measures might seem like a compromise, they often prove more complex and expensive than proactive data governance. Furthermore, the damage from introducing bad data can be difficult to fully remediate, and the period of compromised data integrity can still expose the organization to regulatory risks. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a thorough assessment of the client's requirements, a clear understanding of the data sources and their quality, and an evaluation of the potential impact on the Siebel system and business processes. Consultants must educate clients about the risks associated with data quality issues and advocate for solutions that ensure data integrity and compliance. This involves proposing phased approaches, recommending data cleansing strategies, and implementing robust validation and integration mechanisms. The consultant's role is to provide expert guidance that balances immediate needs with long-term system health and regulatory adherence. Question 13. Implementation of a Siebel 8 upgrade requires a thorough assessment of its potential impact on existing business operations and user adoption. Which approach best ensures a smooth transition and successful integration of the new system? Option A. Rely on assumptions about user familiarity with new interfaces and assume minimal need for extensive training. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment involving all affected business units, focusing on technical, operational, and user-related changes, and develop proactive mitigation and training strategies. Option C. Prioritize the technical upgrade tasks and address user training and process adjustments only after the system is live. Option D. Perform a high-level impact assessment focusing only on critical system functionalities, deferring detailed analysis of user workflows until post-implementation. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment involving all affected business units, focusing on technical, operational, and user-related changes, and develop proactive mitigation and training strategies. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge for Siebel consultants, managing the impact of a significant system upgrade on existing business processes and user adoption. The professional challenge lies in balancing the technical requirements of the upgrade with the human element of change management, ensuring minimal disruption and maximum benefit realization. A careful impact assessment is crucial to identify potential risks, resource needs, and training requirements. The correct approach emphasizes a comprehensive, multifaceted impact assessment that involves key stakeholders from all affected business units. This proactive engagement ensures that all potential impacts, technical, operational, and user-related, are identified and addressed. It aligns with best professional practices by prioritizing a thorough understanding of the current state and the desired future state, facilitating informed decision-making regarding resource allocation, training strategies, and communication plans. This approach minimizes the risk of unforeseen issues, reduces user resistance, and ultimately contributes to a more successful implementation and higher return on investment. From a regulatory perspective, while the 1Z0-202 exam doesn't specify a particular jurisdiction's regulations, professional consulting standards generally mandate due diligence and responsible project management, which includes thorough impact assessment to avoid project failure and potential financial or reputational damage to the client. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the technical aspects of the upgrade, neglecting user training and process adaptation, fails to acknowledge the human factor in system implementation. This can lead to significant user resistance, decreased productivity, and ultimately, the failure of the upgrade to achieve its intended business objectives. This represents an ethical failure in professional responsibility, as it prioritizes a narrow technical view over the holistic success of the project and the client's business. Another incorrect approach that relies on assumptions about user readiness without empirical data or stakeholder input is equally problematic. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and can result in inadequate training, misaligned expectations, and a chaotic post-implementation period. Professionally, this is unacceptable as it exposes the client to unnecessary risks and potential project failure due to a lack of thorough investigation. A third incorrect approach that delays the impact assessment until after the upgrade is completed is a critical failure in project management. This reactive stance means that any identified issues will be significantly more difficult and costly to resolve, potentially leading to prolonged system downtime, data integrity problems, and severe disruption to business operations. This approach is professionally negligent and ethically questionable, as it fails to uphold the consultant's duty to advise and manage the project proactively. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured impact assessment framework. This framework should include defining the scope of the assessment, identifying all affected stakeholders, gathering data on current processes and systems, analyzing potential impacts, technical, operational, user, financial, developing mitigation strategies, and establishing a communication plan. This systematic approach ensures that all critical aspects are considered, leading to a more robust and successful implementation. Question 14. Stakeholder feedback indicates a growing need to capture additional customer interaction details within the Siebel application to support a new marketing campaign. This requires modifications to existing business components and potentially new fields. The marketing department is eager to launch the campaign within the next 2 weeks and is pushing for a rapid deployment of these changes. What is the most appropriate approach for a Siebel 8 consultant to manage this request while ensuring system integrity and compliance? Option A. Immediately implement the requested changes to the business components and fields to meet the marketing department's 2-week deadline, as stakeholder satisfaction is paramount. Option B. Inform the marketing department that the request cannot be fulfilled within their timeline due to Siebel's rigid development process and suggest they postpone their campaign. Option C. Conduct a thorough impact analysis of the proposed changes on existing Siebel configurations, data models, and integrations. Develop a detailed test plan, including regression testing, and implement the changes following a formal change management process with stakeholder sign-off. Option D. Prioritize the technical implementation of the new fields and components, assuming that any data or integration issues can be resolved post-deployment. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough impact analysis of the proposed changes on existing Siebel configurations, data models, and integrations. Develop a detailed test plan, including regression testing, and implement the changes following a formal change management process with stakeholder sign-off. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in Siebel implementations where business requirements evolve post-go-live, impacting existing configurations and data integrity. The professional challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for new functionality with the long-term implications for system stability, data governance, and adherence to established Siebel best practices. The consultant must navigate conflicting stakeholder priorities, potential data migration complexities, and the risk of introducing regressions without a thorough impact assessment. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any proposed solution is not only technically feasible, but also strategically aligned with the overall Siebel roadmap and regulatory compliance. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a structured, phased methodology that prioritizes a comprehensive impact analysis before implementing any changes. This aligns with Siebel's recommended development lifecycle and general IT governance principles. By first documenting the proposed changes, assessing their impact on existing configurations, data models, and integrations, and then developing a detailed test plan, the consultant ensures that potential issues are identified and mitigated proactively. This approach minimizes the risk of unintended consequences, protects data integrity, and ensures that the implemented solution meets both functional and non-functional requirements. It also facilitates clear communication with stakeholders regarding scope, timelines, and potential risks, fostering trust and managing expectations. This methodical process is crucial for maintaining system stability and auditability, which are often implicitly or explicitly required by regulatory frameworks governing data handling and business operations. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing changes directly without a formal impact analysis is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It bypasses critical validation steps, increasing the likelihood of introducing data corruption, system instability, or security vulnerabilities. This lack of due diligence can lead to non-compliance with data privacy regulations, e.g., if sensitive data is mishandled, and can compromise the integrity of business operations, potentially leading to financial penalties or reputational damage. Prioritizing immediate stakeholder requests over a structured change management process is also professionally unacceptable. Our responsiveness is important. It should not come at the expense of system integrity and compliance. This approach can lead to a fragmented and poorly maintained Siebel instance, making future upgrades and maintenance more difficult and costly. It also undermines the principles of good system governance and can create a precedent for bypassing established procedures, leading to a decline in overall system quality and reliability. Focusing solely on the technical implementation without considering the business process implications or data governance aspects is another failure. Siebel is a business application, and its effectiveness is tied to how well it supports business processes and maintains data accuracy. Ignoring these aspects can result in a technically sound but functionally useless or even detrimental solution, failing to deliver the intended business value and potentially violating data quality standards. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that emphasizes a risk-based iterative approach to system changes. This involves 1. Understanding the business need. Clearly define the business problem or opportunity the change aims to address. 2. Impact assessment. Conduct a thorough analysis of how the proposed change will affect existing functionalities, data, integrations, and user experience. 3. Solution design. Develop a robust technical solution that addresses the business need while adhering to Siebel best practices and architectural principles. 4. Testing and validation. Implement comprehensive testing strategies, including unit, integration, and user acceptance testing, to ensure the solution functions as intended and does not introduce regressions. 5. Change management. Follow a formal change control process, including documentation, approvals, and communication to all relevant stakeholders. 6. Post-implementation review. Monitor the system after deployment to identify and address any unforeseen issues. This framework ensures that changes are implemented in a controlled, predictable, and compliant manner, safeguarding system integrity and business continuity. Question 15. To address the challenge of a business unit requesting a new custom field to capture specific client interaction details that are currently not tracked in Siebel, but without a clear understanding of how this data will be used or its impact on existing reporting, what is the most professional and compliant approach for a Siebel 8 consultant? Option A. Implement a temporary workaround by adding a free text comment field to a related business component to capture the information, with a plan to formalize it later. Option B. Conduct a detailed discovery session with the business unit to understand the exact purpose of the new field, how the data will be populated, and its intended use in reporting and analysis before proposing a configuration strategy. Option C. Advise the business unit to define the field's purpose and impact themselves, and then implement their specifications without further technical input. Option D. Immediately create a new custom field in Siebel, as requested by the business unit to expedite delivery and address their immediate need. The correct answer is B. Conduct a detailed discovery session with the business unit to understand the exact purpose of the new field, how the data will be populated, and its intended use in reporting and analysis, before proposing a configuration strategy. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge, where a Siebel consultant must balance the immediate business need for a feature with the long-term implications of data integrity and regulatory compliance. The pressure to deliver quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise data quality, which in turn can lead to significant compliance risks and operational inefficiencies. The consultant's judgment is critical in navigating these competing demands, ensuring that the solution is not only functional but also robust and compliant. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a thorough understanding of the business process and its data implications before proceeding with configuration. This aligns with best professional practices by ensuring that any Siebel configuration directly supports accurate data capture and reporting. In the context of a Siebel 8 consultant exam, this implies adherence to Siebel's own best practices for data modeling and configuration, which are designed to maintain data integrity. This approach minimizes the risk of introducing data anomalies that could violate data governance policies or lead to inaccurate reporting, which are implicit requirements for any regulated industry using Siebel. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately configuring the Siebel application to meet the user's request without fully understanding the underlying business process. This is professionally unacceptable because it risks creating a superficial solution that doesn't address the root cause of the business need, and more importantly, can lead to data corruption or inconsistencies. Such a failure could result in inaccurate reporting, which in a regulated environment could lead to non-compliance with data reporting standards. Another incorrect approach is to defer the decision to the business users without providing any technical guidance or impact assessment. This abdicates the consultant's responsibility to provide expert advice and can lead to the selection of a suboptimal solution that may not be technically feasible or may create future problems. Ethically, a consultant is expected to guide the client towards the best technical and business solution, not simply pass the buck. This can also lead to a failure to adhere to Siebel's architectural principles, potentially creating technical debt. A third incorrect approach is to implement a workaround that bypasses standard Siebel functionality without proper documentation or a plan for future remediation. This is a short-sighted solution that creates technical debt and increases the risk of future data integrity issues. It fails to uphold professional standards of building sustainable and maintainable solutions. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with a deep dive into the business requirements and their implications for data. This involves active listening, asking probing questions to uncover the why behind a request, and assessing the impact on the Siebel data model and existing processes. Before proposing a solution, a consultant should consider the long-term maintainability, scalability, and compliance implications. This iterative process of understanding, analyzing, proposing, and validating ensures that the implemented solution is not only effective in the short term, but also robust and compliant in the long term. Question 16. The control framework reveals a proposed modification to a Siebel application's data model to accommodate new customer attributes. The project timeline is extremely aggressive, and the development team is eager to implement the change to meet the deadline. As the Siebel consultant, you are responsible for ensuring the integrity of the system and adherence to the established control framework. What is the most professionally responsible approach to managing this change request? Option A. Implement the change with minimal modifications to the existing data model, assuming that the new attributes will not cause conflicts with current data. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive impact analysis of the proposed change on existing data structures, business processes, and the overall control framework before proceeding with implementation. Option C. Proceed with the change based on the development team's assurance that it will not significantly impact existing functionality, and conduct a high-level review after deployment. Option D. Implement the change immediately to meet the deadline, and plan to address any potential data integrity or control framework issues in a subsequent maintenance release. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive impact analysis of the proposed change on existing data structures, business processes, and the overall control framework before proceeding with implementation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge where a Siebel consultant must balance the immediate need for functionality with the long-term implications of data integrity and regulatory compliance. The pressure to deliver a working solution quickly can lead to shortcuts that, while seemingly efficient in the short term, can create significant risks. The challenge lies in identifying and mitigating these risks proactively, ensuring that the implemented solution adheres to the established control framework and any applicable regulatory requirements, even when faced with time constraints. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes the integrity of the data and adherence to the control framework. By performing a thorough impact analysis of the proposed change on existing data structures, business processes, and the overall control framework, The consultant ensures that the modification is not only functional but also sustainable and compliant. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of data corruption, audit failures, and potential regulatory penalties. It demonstrates a commitment to best professional practice by embedding risk management and compliance into the implementation lifecycle, aligning with the principles of responsible system development and data stewardship. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding with the change without a comprehensive impact analysis. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure because it bypasses critical risk assessment steps. It increases the likelihood of unintended consequences, such as data inconsistencies or breaches of data privacy regulations, which could lead to severe financial penalties and reputational damage. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the potential harm to the organization and its stakeholders. Another incorrect approach is to implement the change with a minimal, superficial review. While appearing to address the need for a review, this approach fails to adequately identify all potential risks. It can lead to overlooking subtle but critical dependencies or compliance issues, resulting in a solution that is technically functional but fundamentally flawed from a control and regulatory perspective. This represents a failure in professional judgment and a deviation from the expected standard of care in system implementation. A third incorrect approach is to defer the full impact analysis to a later phase, focusing solely on immediate functionality. This is a direct violation of a robust control framework, which mandates that changes are assessed for their broader implications before deployment. It creates a technical debt that will likely be more costly and difficult to resolve later, and it exposes the organization to risks that could have been avoided. This approach demonstrates a short-sighted perspective and a failure to uphold professional responsibilities related to system integrity and compliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to system changes. This involves a structured process of identifying potential risks, assessing their likelihood and impact, and implementing appropriate controls to mitigate them. When faced with time pressures, it is crucial to prioritize activities that safeguard data integrity and regulatory compliance. This often means advocating for sufficient time for thorough analysis and testing, even if it requires careful negotiation with stakeholders. The decision-making process should always weigh the immediate benefits against the potential long-term risks and ensure that all actions are justifiable within the established control framework and relevant regulation. Question 17. Operational review demonstrates that a key client stakeholder is requesting an immediate, non-standard data entry workaround in Siebel to expedite a specific business process, bypassing several standard validation rules. The consultant suspects this workaround may compromise data integrity and create future reporting issues. Option A. Develop a complex custom script to replicate the bypassed validation rules externally, without modifying the core Siebel configuration. Option B. Inform the stakeholder that their request cannot be fulfilled due to Siebel limitations and suggest they find an alternative external process. Option C. Conduct a detailed root cause analysis of the underlying process inefficiency, propose a compliant and sustainable solution within Siebel's framework, and educate the stakeholder on the long-term implications of their requested workaround. Option D. Immediately implement the stakeholder's requested workaround to satisfy their immediate need and maintain a positive client relationship. The correct answer is C. Conduct a detailed root cause analysis of the underlying process inefficiency, propose a compliant and sustainable solution within Siebel's framework, and educate the stakeholder on the long-term implications of their requested workaround. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the potential conflict between a client's immediate desire for a quick solution and the consultant's ethical obligation to ensure data integrity and compliance with Siebel's established best practices and the implicit regulatory framework governing data handling within enterprise systems. The consultant must balance client satisfaction with professional responsibility, recognizing that shortcuts can lead to long-term data quality issues and potential compliance breaches. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough investigation and a phased implementation. This aligns with professional best practices for Siebel consulting, which emphasize understanding the root cause of issues before proposing solutions. It respects the integrity of the Siebel application and its data, ensuring that any changes are well documented, tested, and adhere to the system's architecture. This approach also implicitly supports regulatory compliance by ensuring data accuracy and auditability, which are fundamental to many data governance frameworks. The consultant's responsibility is to guide the client towards sustainable solutions, not just immediate fixes. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately implementing the client's suggested workaround without proper analysis. This fails to uphold professional standards by potentially introducing data inconsistencies or bypassing necessary validation rules within Siebel. It risks creating technical debt and future problems, and could lead to non-compliance with data quality standards that might be indirectly mandated by industry regulations or internal governance policies. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the client's request outright without offering alternatives or explanations. Technically correct in avoiding a flawed solution, this can damage the client relationship and fail to demonstrate the consultant's value in problem solving. A professional consultant should aim to educate the client and collaboratively find the best path forward, even if it's not the client's initial suggestion. This approach neglects the consultative aspect of the role. A third incorrect approach is to implement a complex, custom solution without fully understanding the underlying problem or considering the long-term maintenance implications. This can be an over-engineered response that is costly, difficult to support, and may not even address the core issue effectively. It deviates from best practices of simplicity and maintainability, and could inadvertently create new vulnerabilities or compliance risks. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured problem-solving methodology. This involves active listening to understand the client's stated problem, followed by thorough investigation to identify the root cause. Next, evaluate potential solutions against Siebel best practices, client business needs, and any applicable regulatory or ethical considerations. Communicate findings and recommendations clearly to the client, explaining the rationale and potential consequences of each option. Finally, implement the agreed-upon solution with proper documentation and testing. Question 18. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood and high impact for the risk of integration failures with legacy systems. As a Siebel 8 consultant, which of the following actions best represents a proactive and professionally responsible approach to managing this identified risk? Option A. Assign a junior consultant to monitor the integration process and report any minor anomalies to the project manager without further investigation. Option B. Document the risk in the project risk register and proceed with the planned integration activities, assuming the development team will address any issues as they arise. Option C. Immediately halt all integration work and demand a complete re-evaluation of the integration strategy by the client's IT department before proceeding. Option D. Conduct a detailed root cause analysis of potential integration failure points. Develop specific mitigation strategies for each identified point, and incorporate these into the project plan with assigned owners and timelines. The correct answer is B. Document the risk in the project risk register and proceed with the planned integration activities, assuming the development team will address any issues as they arise. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge for Siebel consultants, balancing the need for comprehensive risk assessment with the practical constraints of project timelines and client resources. The core difficulty lies in determining the appropriate level of detail and rigor for risk identification and analysis when faced with a potentially broad spectrum of risks. A consultant must not only identify risks, but also evaluate their potential impact and likelihood to prioritize mitigation efforts effectively. The correct approach involves a structured and iterative process that aligns with industry best practices for risk management, often implicitly or explicitly guided by regulatory frameworks that emphasize due diligence and responsible project execution. This approach prioritizes risks based on their potential to disrupt project objectives, such as scope, schedule, budget, or quality. By focusing on the most significant risks, the consultant ensures that resources are allocated efficiently to address the most critical threats, thereby increasing the probability of project success. This aligns with the implicit regulatory expectation of prudent management and the ethical obligation to deliver value to the client. An incorrect approach would be to adopt a superficial or overly broad risk assessment. For instance, simply listing every conceivable risk without any attempt to prioritize or quantify their potential impact would be professionally deficient. This fails to provide actionable insights and can overwhelm stakeholders, leading to inaction. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss risks that appear minor without proper evaluation, as seemingly small risks can sometimes escalate into significant problems. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and can lead to unforeseen project disruptions, potentially violating implicit professional standards of care. Furthermore, focusing solely on technical risks while neglecting business or organizational risks would be an incomplete assessment, failing to address the holistic impact on the client's operations. Professionals should approach risk assessment by first establishing clear objectives for the assessment process. This involves understanding the project's scope, critical success factors, and the client's risk appetite. They should then employ a systematic method for risk identification, such as brainstorming, expert interviews, or reviewing historical data. Following identification, risks must be analyzed for their likelihood and impact, often using qualitative scales. This analysis should then inform a prioritization process, allowing for the development of targeted mitigation strategies. Regular review and updates to the risk assessment throughout the project lifecycle are also crucial for maintaining its relevance and effectiveness. Question 19. Consider a scenario where a client, during a Siebel 8 implementation project, insists on a specific customization that the Siebel consultant believes, based on their expertise, will significantly degrade system performance and increase long-term maintenance costs, although it technically fulfills the client's immediate request. The client is adamant about proceeding with this customization. What is the most ethically and professionally sound course of action for the Siebel consultant? Option A. Proceed with the customization as requested by the client to ensure client satisfaction, assuming the client understands the potential consequences. Option B. Refuse to implement the customization, stating it is technically unfeasible without offering any alternative solutions or explanations. Option C. Implement the customization and then inform the client about the performance issues and increased costs after the fact. Option D. Clearly explain the potential negative impacts of the requested customization on system performance and maintenance. Present alternative solution that achieve the business objective with fewer risks, and document all discussions and recommendations. Correct answer is D. Clearly explain the potential negative impacts of the requested customization on system performance and maintenance. Present alternative solutions that achieve the business objective with fewer risks, and document all discussions and recommendations. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a client's explicit request and the consultant's ethical obligation to provide accurate and unbiased advice, especially when that advice might impact the client's financial interests. The consultant must navigate the potential for misrepresentation and the importance of maintaining client trust through transparency. The correct approach, which involves clearly explaining the limitations and potential risks of the proposed customization to the client, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the ethical principles of honesty, integrity, and competence expected of a Siebel consultant. By providing a comprehensive understanding of the implications, the consultant upholds their duty to act in the client's best interest, even if it means advising against a preferred but potentially detrimental course of action. This transparency fosters a stronger, more trustworthy client relationship and mitigates future issues arising from unmet expectations or system failures. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the customization without fully disclosing the risks. This would constitute a failure of professional integrity and honesty. It could lead to a misrepresentation of the system's capabilities and potential performance, violating the trust placed in the consultant. Furthermore, if the customization leads to unforeseen problems or fails to deliver the expected results, the consultant could be held liable for damages, and their professional reputation would be severely compromised. This approach also fails to uphold the principle of competence, as it prioritizes client appeasement over sound technical judgment and risk assessment. Another incorrect approach would be to refuse the client's request outright without offering alternative solutions or a thorough explanation. While this avoids the immediate risk of misrepresentation, it demonstrates a lack of client service and problem-solving initiative. Professional consultants should strive to find solutions that meet client needs within ethical and technical boundaries. Simply refusing the request without further engagement can damage the client relationship and suggest a lack of expertise in finding workarounds or alternative configurations. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a thorough assessment of the client's request against technical feasibility, potential risks, and ethical considerations. The consultant should first understand the underlying business need driving the request. Then, they should evaluate the technical implications of the proposed customization, identifying any potential performance issues, security vulnerabilities, or future maintenance challenges. Finally, they should communicate these findings clearly and transparently to the client, outlining the pros and cons of the proposed solution and suggesting alternative approaches if available. This structured approach ensures that decisions are informed, ethical, and aligned with the client's long-term success. Question 20. The investigation demonstrates that a Siebel consultant, during a routine system configuration review, identified a critical security flaw that could inadvertently expose sensitive customer personally identifiable information, PI, to unauthorized internal users due to an overly permissive role assignment. The consultant is aware that the client has strict data privacy policies and is subject to data protection regulations. The consultant has the technical expertise to correct the configuration, but is concerned about the immediate impact of reporting such a significant issue, which might delay the project and reflect poorly on the implementation team. What is the most ethically and professionally responsible course of action for the Siebel consultant? Option A. Immediately document the vulnerability and report it to the designated client project manager and data privacy officer, recommending a prioritized remediation plan. Option B. Inform a trusted colleague outside the client organization about the vulnerability to seek advice on how to proceed without directly reporting it to the client. Option C. Discreetly correct the configuration without informing the client to avoid project delays and potential negative repercussions for the team. Option D. Ignore the finding, assuming that the risk of exploitation is low and the client's internal controls will prevent any actual data exposure. The correct answer is A. Immediately document the vulnerability and report it to the designated client project manager and data privacy officer, recommending a prioritized remediation plan. Explanation. The investigation demonstrates a scenario where a Siebel consultant, while performing a system audit, discovers a potential data privacy violation within the Siebel application's configuration. This violation, if exploited, could expose sensitive customer information. The consultant is faced with an ethical dilemma: to report the issue immediately, potentially causing disruption and reputational damage to the client, or to attempt to rectify it discreetly without full disclosure, risking further compromise or appearing to cover up a problem. The challenge lies in balancing the consultant's professional duty to the client with their ethical obligation to uphold data privacy standards and regulatory compliance. The correct approach involves immediate, transparent reporting of the discovered vulnerability to the appropriate client stakeholders, such as the project manager or data protection officer, along with a clear recommendation for remediation. This aligns with professional codes of conduct that mandate integrity, honesty, and a commitment to protecting client interests and adhering to legal and regulatory frameworks. Specifically, in the context of data privacy, this approach upholds principles of accountability and due diligence, ensuring that potential breaches are addressed proactively and in accordance with relevant data protection laws. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the finding, assuming it is minor or unlikely to be exploited. This constitutes a failure of professional responsibility and a potential breach of regulatory requirements related to data security and breach notification. Another incorrect approach is to attempt to fix the issue without informing the client, which undermines transparency, erodes trust, and could lead to unintended consequences or incomplete remediation. This also bypasses the client's right to be informed about risks to their data and their ability to make informed decisions about mitigation strategies. A third incorrect approach is to report the issue to unauthorized individuals or external parties without the client's consent, which violates confidentiality agreements and professional ethics. Professionals should adopt a decision-making process that prioritizes ethical conduct and regulatory compliance. This involves identifying the ethical issue, gathering relevant facts, considering the potential consequences of different actions, consulting relevant professional standards and regulations, and then acting in a manner that is transparent, accountable, and in the best interest of all parties, while upholding legal obligations.